Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Strategy Game podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Shippey, and today we're continuing our Seen, Known, and Heard series. This is in parallel to the book that I've been writing, all about how to see, know, and hear ourselves and others to help us lead in our lives and our businesses. So today we're talking about what it looks like to see, know, and hear ourselves. And why is that important, right? Seeing ourselves is really a continuous journey throughout our lives. No matter how many years we do the internal work of looking at ourselves, we're ever evolving and changing. So we have to keep seeing and knowing and hearing ourselves as we change throughout our lives. It's almost like sometimes pausing to say, oh, wow, look at that. I reacted that way and I didn't think I was going to do that. Or look at that, like this is coming up and I didn't see that coming. As we go through different things with our family or with our friends or in our businesses, and we have to make decisions and there's weight on us. There's pressure, right? At different points in our lives, and more intense than others. And when we encounter those times, what comes out? So when we get squeezed, what comes out, right? So if you picture like a tube of toothpaste, this is the visual I'm getting right now, and you squeeze it and you put so much pressure on it. This has actually happened to me before, that the back end just comes undone and all the toothpaste comes out, not the way it's supposed to, right? And so sometimes when we find ourselves in situations that are really hard or really intense, or there's a lot of growth happening, this is what we can come up against. And the reason that we need to see, know, and hear ourselves in these seasons is so that we don't explode the wrong way, so that it doesn't splatter and come out in the wrong way all over others and ourselves. And that benefits nobody. It doesn't benefit us and it doesn't benefit others. And so if we can do the continual work of identifying our emotions and listening to signals from our body, knowing our triggers and giving ourselves rest when we need it, then we're going to be able to process things as we're going along the path of life. And it also keeps us from exhaustion, burnout, ruin in relationships, and really going down a not so good path. And so the good news is here that self-awareness, the ability to make these wise decisions, is accessible when we practice seeing and knowing and hearing ourselves. And it doesn't have to feel like this other thing that you constantly have to do, or this other job that you're going to take on, and especially if you're in a season of just being tired or weary from everything that you're going through or what your daily life looks like. So this doesn't have to be a burden that you carry. This is just a new way of operating. So what we talk about at Storywork is just becoming a game changer, not just an outperformer. What does that mean? So an outperformer is someone who is constantly just on the hamster wheel of life, just waking up at 6 a.m. and doing the grind and going to bed at 11, 12, 1 a.m. And they're getting up and they're doing it all over again. And they're trying so hard to be better or to make enough money or to hustle for their family, or, lead a company, and they're working way too long and way too hard and getting nowhere fast. That is the hamster wheel of life that we've probably all been on at some point, probably will be there again. But what I want to do is help you get off of that hamster wheel, catch yourself when you're headed into that hamster wheel, the detrimental paths, pull yourself off of it by seeing and knowing and hearing yourself and becoming a game changer. What does a game changer look like? A game changer looks like someone who is hearing the words that are coming out of their mouth, is observing themselves as they're moving throughout the day, is pausing before they move into their day and saying, what am I supposed to do today with my time? Instead of just aimlessly wandering around trying to get things done or accomplished, right? So it's all about just really the intentional life. If I had to sum it up, that's really what creates game changers, not just outperformers. And so that's the strategy work that I do for businesses, for companies, for organizations, nonprofits. We help them get intentional about their strategies to see, hear, and know others, right? From a marketing perspective, from a business strategy, from a leadership perspective. But then through this podcast, I also get to help you do that with yourself. And so that's really, and through the book, I mean, that was really the point of writing the book. And so just a couple questions for you to start practicing this today. So I always like to give really tangible tips. Like it's great when you hear a concept like this, like, oh, okay, so you know and hear yourself. Well, how do you actually do that? And how do you apply it to your daily life? So the first thing you can do, and I just said it a couple of minutes ago, is just hear the words that come out of your mouth. So what tone, what language, and what words are you choosing? I'm just going to pause and I'm going to read it again in case you're in the car or you're on the go or you're not writing this down. You don't need to be. Just remember, what tone, language, and words are you choosing? And what do they mean or represent? So this sounds a little bit intense, but when you think about the tone of voice that you're talking in, like the tone of voice that I'm talking in right now, is probably one with a little bit of authority, because I'm talking about something that I've written on and studied and observed and practiced in my own life. So the tone of voice that I'm going to use now, as opposed to the tone of voice that I'm going to use when listening to a friend who's going through a really hard thing, is going to be different. It's not going to be directive. It's not going to be confident. It's going to be more from a place of humility and listening to them and not saying much, and just a gentler tone of voice. So as I'm listening to a friend and I'm thinking of a friend that's going through a really hard thing, I just slow down. Like I just pause and I just look at them and I hear what they're saying. But more importantly, I start to actually feel what they're saying and what they're going through. And you can see that, like, I'm even slowing down and thinking about it right now, how I want to listen, how I want to posture myself. It's not that I'm necessarily unsure of myself if I'm talking to a friend through a really hard situation, but it's like I guess humility is the right word. It's with pause is the phrase that I think about. It's with pause because I don't know what it's actually like to be where they are, and what they're sharing is probably really hard and vulnerable. And so I'm not going to answer them like in a directive way, right? Because what do I know about being where they are, right? What do I know about walking through that hard thing or that road? And I would hope that my tone of voice and my language and the words would just bring them comfort, would help them feel not alone in it, right? And now I'm going to move back into a tone of voice with language and words that are meant to help you as you continue on the path of your life, and get change you need to be a game changer. So you can see where my tone of voice and my whole demeanor literally just changed. So that's what I mean by just hear the words and the tone and the language that come out of your mouth. And what does that represent for you? And maybe when you pause, you're recognizing, like, watch today, when you do this, you're going to catch yourself saying, wow, why did I choose that word? Or why did I just drop the F-bomb 10 times in that sentence? Like, was that something I was really angry about? Or, I hope that doesn't happen for you today, but if it did, like, I'm using an extreme example to call attention to the fact that there are meanings behind the words. There's a why behind it. And so when we cultivate this greater self-awareness, that can be a catalyst for change. That can help us catch our thoughts. It can help us catch ourselves and redirect ourselves, in the direction that we want to go. So knowing ourselves can really help us tell others also what we want and need from a relationship with them. So that's really a huge part of this too, is just communicating in a way that is really clear, and kind with those closest to us, so that we can get what we need also, and we can start to understand what they need. So giving ourselves what we need is a really important part of life. And if we don't know what we need, or we're not giving ourselves what we need, then we're not going to be able to show up and be a game changer, because we're foggy. Our minds are foggy, our hearts are foggy, our souls are foggy. And when we have fog, then we can't stay on the path that we were meant to stay on. So there's a lot connected there. And I could see how it's actually connected to our purpose, right? Directly. So that's why we want to clear these things out of the way. And so if we're unable to see our own selves, if we can't look in the mirror and see ourselves clearly, then we can't also give others the gift of really understanding and compassion, and things of that nature. So that's what we want to be able to do. We want to understand our strengths and how we can use them. We want to ask for what we need, and we want to give ourselves what we need. And so by understanding ourselves and taking some time to just kind of like observe ourselves, then we're able to really function on all cylinders as we were created to function. We can also understand our weaknesses. So this includes blind spots. I don't know what I don't know, but I know if I don't know it, I'm going to find the right people in my life to tell me about them. We've done this with a couple friends, and it obviously involves close friends that really, really care about you, have been there through your life, through a lot. You're just not going to ask anybody to uncover all of your blind spots. But it has been really awesome with some friends to just honestly tell each other, like, what do you see that I don't see? What am I missing here? And trust that they'll hold your heart gently, that they're not going to crush you. Their intent is for you, not against you, and having these sessions every once in a while is so helpful, because it really does allow you a safe space to be able to call that out and recognize those things. There's also a place for this in leadership with teams and in the workplace, right? Having those relationships and cultivating those. And that's really part of the framework that we're developing here, the Seen, Known, and Heard framework for teams, is creating spaces that are safe to be able to do that, and help people uncover weaknesses or blind spots so that they can create a plan to come against them, really, to combat them, to not necessarily overcome them, because sometimes we just need somebody to step alongside of us in our weakness and be there to walk with us. Or if it's a team standpoint, maybe a role needs to shift, because now this blind spot has been able to come out into the light, and we can say, okay, what are we going to do about this now? How do we need to shift our team to allow us to be able to run at full speed, right? In a way that is intentional and thoughtful and most impactful, because those two things are linked. So intention and impact are linked together directly. And that's why this framework is important. So using just curiosity, just get curious about yourself today. Ask yourself questions about the patterns of your lives, about your routines, the things you always do, the things you count on the most, and why. Like, why do I count on that so much? What does that really mean to me? Why is it so important that I do this thing in this order or at this time, or that I get this? Am I counting on something too much? A lot of things will be revealed if we just get curious. And there's so much more in the chapter that I'm not going to get into. You all can read it if this is something. And I also go into tangible tools like catching the thought, the 5 whys framework, the feelings, and actually what they need. And this makes it really easy for teams to understand. And so there's some really tangible tools here, but at least just some thought starters for you today in this episode, of just noticing yourself. That's it. Like, that's all you have to do to start this work, is just notice yourself. Take note of why behind certain things, certain tone of voice, words, all of that stuff, that choice, and you'll be on your way to practicing what it looks like to see, know, and hear yourself. And when you can give yourself what you need, then you can also show up for others, and you can begin to actually receive from others, which will fill you up. So all of this is super connected and very powerful. Thanks so much for listening in. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email. If you like this episode, please leave us a review. That helps so much. And for more, you can head to storywork.co.